It started with the sound of ceramic breaking. In a small apartment on the second floor, above a closed shoe repair shop in Boyle Heights, Los Angeles, 6-year-old Lucia Vega stood frozen in the kitchen doorway. Her mother lay on the floor, motionless, one hand stretched out, fingers touching the edge of a broken cup. Chamomile tea pooled around the shards, steam still rising like a whisper no one could hear. Marisol had been standing at the kitchen counter less than a minute before. She had just finished her second shift at the laundromat, eyes heavy, shoulders aching. She poured boiling water. Then her knees buckled. Her head hit the edge of the cabinet. A thin line of blood trailed behind her left ear, slow and silent. Lucia did not scream, did not cry. She stood there in mismatched socks, gripping the hem of her nightgown, watching her mother with eyes not old enough to understand, but old enough to feel that something was terribly wrong. Then she acted, not out of bravery, but because her mother had told her to. Once a month, Marisol made her daughter repeat it like a prayer. If anything happens to Mommy, you call Uncle Tomás. He is right downstairs. He will come. Lucia climbed onto the chair, then onto the counter. Her knees pressed against the cold stone. She reached for her mother's phone on the shelf above the stove, pulling it down with both hands. She scrolled through the contacts with fingers stiff from cold, from fear. She found the name, pressed call, but her fingers slipped, one digit off. A tiny mistake on a tiny screen in a tiny apartment in a neighborhood most people drove through without ever looking back. The call connected. On the other end, in a quiet house in the Hollywood Hills, Keanu Reeves sat alone in his living room. He had recently changed his personal phone number, something he did from time to time when the old one leaked. The new number was not public. Only a few people had it, and by coincidence, it was just one digit off from the number of a man named Tomás who lived on the ground floor of an old building in Boyle Heights. The phone buzzed. Unknown number. Most people would have let it ring. Keanu picked up. At first there was only breathing. Quick, shallow, broken. Then a tiny voice came through, smaller than a whisper. "Is this Uncle Tomás?" Keanu paused. "No, sweetheart, I am not Tomás." A beat of silence. Then the voice cracked open. "Please come. My mommy fell. My mommy is bleeding. My mommy will not wake up. Please come." Keanu stood up. He did not call his manager, did not call an ambulance, did not set the phone down and go back to his book. He asked one question. "Where are you?" The tiny voice hesitated. "I do not know the street name, but my house is above Mr. Rigo's shoe repair shop. There is a blue door. Apartment 2C. That was enough." Keanu pulled on a hoodie, tugged a ball cap low, and grabbed the keys to his old pickup truck. The truck he had kept for years, the one that looked nothing like what anyone imagined a movie star would drive. He did not think about why he was going. He just went. 15 minutes later, the pickup stopped on a narrow street wrapped in fog. The building looked like the kind the city called Heritage, which really meant forgotten. Rigo's shoe shop sign hung crooked. The blue door sat on 3 concrete steps, its hinges nearly gone. The hallway was dark, smelling of dust and heater air. Apartment 2C was at the end. The door was cracked open, a sliver of kitchen light cutting across the floor. He knocked. The door creaked wide. A tiny girl stood in the gap. Damp socks. Hair stuck to one side of her face. Both hands clutching her mother's phone against her chest. "You came?" the girl said. "Yeah," Keanu said. He knelt beside Marisol. Her face was gray, her breathing shallow. A line of dried blood ran from behind her ear down to her collar. He checked her pulse. Weak but there. She needed emergency care. Now, he slid one arm under her shoulders, the other under her knees, and lifted her. She was light. Light enough that he knew she had been skipping meals so her daughter would not have to. "Grab your coat, sweetheart," he said to Lucia. His voice was calm but firm. The girl did not hesitate. She pulled her jacket off the hook and followed him out the door. In the truck, Lucia sat beside her mother, one hand resting on Marisol's arm, as if to make sure she was still there. At the second red light, the girl spoke. "You are not Uncle Tom's." "No." "Are you a doctor?" "No." The girl thought for a moment. "But you still came." Keanu glanced at the rearview mirror. The girl was looking at him. Not afraid, not confused. Just something that looked like hope. The kind of hope too real to be faked. "Your mom is going to be okay," he said. "Do you promise?" "I promise." He did not know why he said it. No medical degree, no test results, no authority to make that kind of promise. But in that moment, in a cold truck on an empty road, with a stranger's child looking at him as if he were the only solid thing left in the world, it was the only thing that felt right. At the emergency room, Keanu carried Marisol through the sliding doors, walked straight past the check-in counter, and did not stop when the night clerk stood up to object. "She has a head injury and has been unconscious for more than 20 minutes, he said. "I am not letting her lie in a hallway." They did not argue further. The trauma team moved quickly. Marisol was wheeled behind the curtain. Keanu found Lucia in the waiting room. She sat on a hard plastic chair, legs pulled up, her jacket zipped to her chin. Tiny under the fluorescent lights, he sat down beside her. Not too close. Just close enough for her to know she was not alone. Half an hour passed, maybe longer. Time moves differently under that kind of light. Finally, a nurse stepped out. "She is stable. Mild concussion, dehydration, exhaustion, no internal bleeding. She will wake up soon." Lucia looked up at Keanu. "Can you come in with me?" He nodded, and they walked in together. Marisol opened her eyes to find a stranger sitting in the corner of the room. Old hoodie, ball cap pulled low, a few days of stubble on his jaw. He sat still the way someone does when they have been waiting a long time and have no intention of leaving. He explained her daughter had called. She had collapsed. He had brought her here. "Why did you not call an ambulance?" she asked. "I was closer. There was no time to wait." Then, he said something that was clearly not part of any plan. "And I know what it feels like when everything falls apart and no one comes." No one. The sentence landed softly but carried weight. Marisol did not ask what he meant. She did not need to. The way he said it, flat, precise, undecorated, told her it was not something he shared often. Lucia ran in and hugged her mother. "He came so fast, Mommy. His truck is big and old and so loud." Marisol let out a small laugh. For the first time, the room had air to breathe. "What is your name?" "I forgot to ask." "Keanu." "Keanu Reeves." She blinked. The name echoed somewhere behind her memory, familiar the way a song heard in a grocery store is familiar without remembering the title. Before he left, he told her the hospital bill had been taken care of. Marisol shook her head. "I cannot accept that." "You do not need to accept anything," he said. His voice carried no expectation, no trace of charity. Just fact. "Take your daughter home." Then he paused at the door. "The hospital you used to work at. Cresthaven Memorial, right?" The question came from nowhere but landed exactly where it hurt. "Yes," she said slowly. "How do you know that?" "No reason. The name just sounded familiar." Then he left. The next morning, Keanu came back. No hoodie this time. An old flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up, a paper bag with bandages and antiseptic. In the kitchen, Marisol talked. 9 years as head oncology nurse at Cresthaven. She had been fired after reporting an equipment failure that killed a young patient. A boy named Daniel, 8 years old. Leukemia. His heart was already weak from chemotherapy. The cardiac monitor assigned to his bed had been flagged for malfunction the week before. She had filed the report herself. No one fixed it. No one responded. That night, Daniel went into cardiac arrest just after 3 in the morning. The alarm never sounded. The hallway was silent. His mother came running out screaming because she had reached over and felt her son's skin gone cold. 35 minutes later, Daniel was pronounced dead. Afterward, she checked the device logs. The monitor had recorded no heart rate data that night, and the malfunction report she had filed the week before had been altered, replaced with a note reading, Routine maintenance completed. Unit cleared for use. The hospital called it an isolated incident. Human Resources accused her of falsifying records. They pushed her out without a hearing, without review. I was just a nurse in a low-income district. No advanced degrees, no lawyer. They had an entire legal team. I had an envelope and a story nobody wanted to believe. She handed Keanu a sealed brown envelope, handwritten on the front Daniel, Report 0517. Inside were incident logs, internal emails, and a delivery receipt for the cardiac monitor, signed by the hospital's chief financial officer, Victor Hargrove. Keanu looked at the name. I know this man. Hargrove was the CFO on 2 community health projects funded by my charitable foundation. Both went over budget. Both shut down in under a year. He took the envelope and left behind a handwritten phone number on a scrap of paper. No business card. No logo, just black ink on white paper. That night, Keanu did not go home. He sat in the small office behind his house. No awards on the walls, no magazine covers, just a wooden desk, a reading lamp, and a window looking out at the dark hills. He called Phil Castillo, his personal manager, and requested a full audit of the Westbrook Wellness Foundation. Tonight, Phil found it. $620,000 had been funneled into a shell company called Pinnacle Health Partners, LLC, registered in Delaware. The silent partner listed in the original filing Victor Hargrove. The next morning, Phil uncovered more, an internal transfer authorization from Cresthaven, dated March 14, 2022, signed by Marisol Vega, approved by Victor Hargrove. But Marisol had never worked in the finance department, had never signed anything beyond medical records. Phil compared the signatures. The original was natural, slightly slanted in the way real handwriting always is. The one on the transfer form was too smooth, too even, mechanically spaced. Forged. Hargrove had not just stolen money. He had stolen an identity. He used the name of a woman the system had already discarded, a woman already labeled unreliable, as a shield, because no one questions the signature of someone who has already been thrown away. Keanu brought the documents to Marisol's apartment. She read slowly. No trembling. No clenched jaw, just one blink, when she saw her own name written in handwriting that was not hers. I did not sign this, she said. I know, Keanu replied. Marisol stood up. If we send this, Victor will not sit still. He will not have time, Keanu said. I have already contacted the audit committee at the Westbrook Foundation. Marisol looked him straight in the eyes. Let me be the one to send it. She sat down, opened her laptop, and attached each document. The forged authorization, Phil's financial trail, the original incident report from the brown envelope she had kept all these years. She addressed it to the Internal Compliance Office and the Federal Oversight Agency. Then she pressed send. 72 hours later, the response came. Victor's lawyers sent a threatening letter to Apartment 2C, accusing her of defamation, demanding over $2 million in damages, requiring retraction of all claims within 14 days. Marisol received the letter on a Tuesday morning, tucked between her electric bill and a supermarket flyer. Her hands shook, not from the cold, from recognizing the same old tactic. The system had not changed. It had just put on a more expensive suit. She called Keanu, her voice unsteady. They are coming. I do not have money for a lawyer. I do not have savings. I have a daughter who needs her mother still standing when this is over, and right now I do not know if I can do that. Keanu arrived in 40 minutes. He read the letter, set it down. This is not a lawsuit. This is intimidation, and it is designed to do exactly what it is doing to you right now. Scare you into giving up. You do not understand what this feels like, Marisol said. You have resources. You have people who pick up the phone. I have nothing. When someone like Victor Hargrove aims an entire legal team at someone like me, it is not a fair fight. It never was. Keanu did not argue, did not minimize. He simply said, I have contacted a lawyer who specializes in defending whistleblowers. You will not pay a cent. Why are you doing this? Because I owe Daniel. I owe his mother. And you are the only person who ever stood up and said that what happened to him was wrong." Just then, a tiny voice came from the hallway. "Mummy?" Lucia stood in the kitchen doorway, still in her school uniform, backpack half zipped, a stuffed rabbit under one arm. She looked at her mother's face, then at Keanu, then back at her mother. "If you help, will the bad people stop hurting other people?" The question dropped into the kitchen like a stone falling into still water. Marisol looked at her daughter, the tiny child who had picked up a phone and called for help in the dark when adults, twice her age, would have frozen. And in Lucia's eyes there was not fear, but the stubborn belief that doing the right thing had to mean something. A tear slid down Marisol's cheek before she could stop it. She wiped it with the back of her hand, knelt down to her daughter's level. "I hope so, baby," she whispered. Then she stood up, looked at Keanu. The fear did not disappear, but it shifted to one side, just enough for something harder, something older, to take its place. "All right, I will do it. But I have one condition. I am not doing this for you. Not for any foundation or any board. I am doing this for the patients who never got a second chance. For Daniel, for his mother. And when it is over, I walk away. On my terms." Keanu nodded. "That is all I was hoping for." 3 weeks later, Marisol walked into a hearing room on the 9th floor of a federal building in downtown Los Angeles. On one side sat the Oversight Committee. On the other, 3 of Victor Hargrove's lawyers. Black suits, leather briefcases, faces professionally arranged to convey calm authority. Marisol sat across from them. Gray blouse, dark slacks, hair pulled back, no jewelry. Beside her was Grace Delacroix, a lawyer with 23 years of experience defending whistleblowers in the healthcare sector. Keanu was not present. That was a deliberate choice. This was not his testimony. He had done his part behind the scenes, making sure the financial evidence was entered into the official record, making sure Grace had every document she needed. But the seat at the table belonged to Marisol. Victor's lead attorney opened with exactly the tactic she had expected: credentials. "Ms. Vega, you served as a floor nurse at Cresthaven for 9 years. Is that correct?" "Head nurse?" Marisol corrected calmly. "Oncology department. Head nurse. And in that role, did you receive any formal training in financial auditing, forensic accounting, or institutional compliance?" "No." "Any advanced degrees in hospital administration, public health policy, or data analysis?" "No." "Then can you explain to this committee why your interpretation of financial documents and equipment logs should carry more weight than the hospital's official records?" The room went silent. Marisol breathed, then answered, "I do not have a degree in finance. I do not have a background in auditing. What I have is 9 years of walking those hallways at 2 in the morning, checking vitals on children whose parents were too exhausted to stay awake. What I have is a report I filed with my own hands about a defective cardiac monitor that no one replaced. And what I have is the memory of standing in a room at 3:15 in the morning, watching a team try to bring an 8-year-old boy back to life while his mother screamed in the hallway." She paused. "You are asking why this committee should believe me instead of the official records. I am asking you to consider that those records were altered. The equipment report I filed was changed after the fact. My name was forged on a financial document I have never seen and never signed, and the person responsible for all of it is sitting in this very room, through the lawyers who are asking you to question my credentials instead of his conduct." No one spoke. The lead attorney opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked down at his notes, as if searching for an answer that did not exist. 2 hours after Marisol pressed send from her kitchen table, Victor Hargrove was suspended indefinitely. 1 week later, federal agents arrived at Cresthaven on a Tuesday morning. They walked through the lobby, down the corridor where nurses changed shifts and patients waited for news, straight to the administrative wing on the 4th floor. Hargrove was in his office. Door open. On the phone when they walked in. For the first time in a very long time, the man who had built an entire career on the ability to control every room he entered found himself in a room he could not control. They read his rights, handcuffed him, led him out through the very same hallway where, years before, a nurse had tried to report a malfunctioning monitor and been told she was imagining things. The charges: embezzlement of federal healthcare funds, forgery of financial documents, insurance fraud, and criminal endangerment of patients through knowingly defective equipment. That evening, Marisol sat on the couch, Lucia asleep beside her, watching the news broadcast footage of Hargrove being escorted out of Cresthaven. The segment lasted less than 2 minutes, squeezed between a weather update and a highway repair story. Most viewers probably changed the channel, but for Marisol, those were the longest 2 minutes of her life. She did not cheer, did not cry, just watched. The way you watch when something you have waited for so long finally ends that you have forgotten you were waiting. Her phone buzzed. A text from Keanu. 2 words. It is done. She read it, set the phone down, closed her eyes. For the first time in years, the silence in the apartment did not feel heavy. It felt like space, like room to breathe. After that, things moved fast. Every defective cardiac monitor was pulled within 48 hours. The Westbrook Foundation was restructured. The old board dissolved. 5 years of financial records were opened for independent audit. Cresthaven issued a formal public statement acknowledging systemic failures and apologizing to the affected families. Daniel's mother was named Renata. She lived in Pomona, 30 miles from the hospital. When the Oversight Committee representative called, she was silent for a long time. She listened as they told her about the defective equipment, the altered reports, the forged documents, and the nurse who had tried to tell the truth years ago. Finally she spoke, her voice soft and steady. At least now I know my son was not forgotten. At least now I know someone tried. She did not say anything more. She did not need to. The Boyle Heights community found out too. Not through the press or the television. Through conversations at the laundromat, whispers at the school gate, stories shared over coffee at the corner grocery. Neighbors brought food to her door. A former patient's family sent a handwritten card. 2 nurses who had stayed silent when Marisol was pushed out finally called. One of them cried, the other simply said, "I am sorry it took so long." One evening, Lucia sat coloring at the kitchen table, looked at a bouquet someone had left by the front door, then glanced up and asked, "Mummy, I think people like you now." Marisol looked at her daughter and smiled. "People always liked me, baby. They were just too scared to say so." Keanu offered Marisol a position as an independent healthcare auditor. Flexible schedule. Full benefits. 3 times her salary at Cresthaven. Marisol did not hesitate. "No, this is not charity," Keanu said. "This is what you are worth." She looked at him, her gaze steady and sharp, the same gaze that had silenced an entire room of lawyers 3 weeks earlier. "Exactly. And that is why I get to choose what peace looks like for me." She opened free first aid classes at the Boyle Heights Community Center. Twice a week, flyers printed at home, taped to lampposts, slipped under doors. The first session had 7 people. 3 mothers with babies on their hips, a retired bus driver, 2 teenagers dragged there by their grandmother, and an old woman who sat in the back row without saying a word but came back every single week. Marisol taught them how to stop bleeding, check a pulse, position an unconscious person, and call for help when your hands are shaking and your voice wants to disappear. She opened every session with the same line. The most important thing is not knowing everything. It is not being afraid to act. By the 3rd month, the class had over 30 regulars. Keanu visited more and more often. In the old pickup, in a flannel shirt, carrying takeout from the taqueria on Cesar Chavez Boulevard that Lucia once declared had the best quesadillas in the history of her entire life. He did not try to become their family. Did not try to fill any role. There was no script for this. He was just a man who had picked up the phone one night and found himself changed by everything that followed. A Thursday evening. Late, he stood outside the old building, a bag of food in his hand. He looked up. Second floor. Third window from the left. The light was on. The wind carried the smell of wet pavement and jasmine from somewhere close. The door opened. Lucia stood there, wrapped in a cardigan twice her size, bare feet on cold tile, grinning wide. "You are late," the girl whispered. "I know," Keanu said. And he stepped inside. In the small kitchen, warm light spread across the counter. The stove was going. Something bubbling in a pot, the smell of garlic, tomatoes, and something warm, cooked slow. Marisol stood barefoot, hair tied back. No makeup, a wooden spoon in her hand. She turned when she heard him. Their eyes met. No background music, no declarations, no speeches about meaning or the future. Just silence. The kind of silence that does not need to be filled, because it already holds everything that matters. Keanu spoke first. "I did not come to change your life." Marisol nodded. "I came because I think mine needed to be changed," he said quietly. "I do not know what this is. I am not going to pretend I do. But if you are still willing, I would like to stay a little longer this time." She did not rush to answer. Instead, she opened the drawer beside the stove, pulled out a second wooden spoon, and handed it to him. "Then stir this. And do not let it burn." He laughed. Not the kind of laugh from a movie. The kind that catches you off guard. Warm, slightly rough. The laugh of someone who forgot they still knew how. Lucia giggled from the table behind them, her feet swinging beneath the chair, turning the pages of a picture book. She did not look up. She did not need to. She already knew he was going to stay. Keanu stood beside Marisol at the stove, stirring the pot with a borrowed spoon. The smell of garlic and thyme rose between them. Rain began to tap softly against the kitchen window. So gently it was, as if the world was trying not to disturb them. And in that moment, standing in a kitchen he had no claim to, beside a woman who owed him nothing, under the gaze of a child who had started it all with a wrong number, Keanu understood something he had never been able to buy, build, or earn. Belonging. Not as a hero, not as a star, not as the man who fixed everything, just as someone who showed up, stayed, and was handed a spoon. "If you will allow me just a moment more before we end. I have told many stories, about courage, about loss, about people who found light in places no one thought to look. But this story stayed with me differently, not because of the investigation or the hearing or the arrest. Because of the kitchen. I keep thinking about Marisol, standing at the stove after everything she went through, choosing not to go back to the system that threw her out, but choosing instead to teach her neighbors how to help each other. She did not need a title. She needed a room, a first aid kit, and people willing to listen. And Keanu. When a frightened child dialed the wrong number at 2 in the morning, he did not hang up. Did not call someone else. He pulled on a hoodie, got in his truck, and drove. No cameras, no audience. Then Lucia, 6 years old, hands shaking. And she still picked up the phone. Adults twice her age would have frozen. She did not. Every discovery, every document, every moment of justice. All of it began because one child refused to do nothing. Thank you for being here until the end of this story. If it touched something in you, I hope you will share it. New stories are waiting for you here every day. Because sometimes, everything changes with a single phone call, and all it takes is someone on the other end willing to say, "I am on my way."